Following program is a production of the Barroom Network. It is intended for all audiences.
Doug Buffone.
This defense sucks. This is moronic.
John Buffone.
Is Bill Lazor a good play caller, or is Matt Nagy such a bad play caller that it makes average look like Bill Walsh?
Doug was behind the microphone first. He never held back.
Very difficult to score when your offense is on the bench. When your defense is out there giving up 70, 80, 70, 64-yard drives.
Now, it's his nephew, John, and there's no holding this Buffone back either.
What the Bears are right now is what has been wrong with them for over 30 years. Just aim to be competitive and do your best to be average. And maybe we should just accept that, because the front office sure as hell did.
I don't mind you getting beat. I got my ass whipped many times, but I tell you, I took somebody down with me.
The games have been close because the defense, your offense, which you came in to revolutionize, has gotten worse as the years go by.
It's Buffone 55, the John Buffone Show.
We went back with the classic. Hello and welcome to Buffone 55, a fast-paced approach at breaking down those lovable Chicago Bears. I'm your host, John Buffone, and with me as always is my producer and co-host, Alyssa Barbier. Alyssa, the Bears have had many struggles, and Bears fans have had many opinions on those many struggles, and they're in prime time again, so everything's great. How you doing?
I'm doing good, except for the whole back-to-back primetime games. I mean, what the hell are we doing here?
Why?
I mean, I know that I'm not looking forward to being up till 2 a.m. again, covering what is sure to be another loss.
You know, that Chicago market comes back and bites you in the butt every once in a while, because you know this team is not 3 primetime games worthy, and yet here they are back-to-back, don't you know? So we get to have all that fun national ridicule the day after, but we shall persevere. Kind of a letdown loss, to say the least, coming off of Thursday. But you've had some time to get over it. Are you over it yet?
Yeah. I mean, like, if we were to do the show like right after, like the day after, I think that it would have been a lot of yelling on both of our ends. So, yeah. I mean, we've had some time to kind of digest it and everything, but I mean, how did they lose that game?
Let's get angry again. Let's get angry about it. But we have an absolutely awesome guest tonight to help us get ready for the New England Patriots in that much anticipated Monday night showdown that the Bears have with the Patriots. But just in case this is your first time watching or listening to Buffone 55, Alyssa, can you give them a rundown of how this show works?
Absolutely. So Buffone 55 has 3 segments, and we always begin with our guest. And this week, we'll be talking to Andrew Callahan, the Patriots beat writer for the Boston Herald and the host of the Pats Interference podcast. That's then followed by our B55 segment, which is when I ask John 5 questions, and his responses must be completed within 55 seconds. The 55 is John's way of paying tribute to the great Doug Buffone, his uncle, his mentor, and a man who played 15 seasons with the Bears and wore number 55. We then finish things up with a free-for-all that we call Buffone's Basement, where John and I welcome in Aldo Gandia, and we laugh, we cry, and we try to make sense of this team. With all that being said, John, take it away.
Thank you, Alyssa. Like you said, our guest tonight is the Patriots beat writer for the Boston Herald and the host of the Pats Interference podcast. He is a New England native, and he's also one of the best reporters to ever cover the Lancaster-Lebanon League in South Central Pennsylvania, Mr. Andrew Callahan. Andrew, how you doing, buddy?
Too kind. I'm doing very well after that intro. And Alyssa, I give you a lot of credit. It's hard to keep John to 55 seconds. So I think that's an excellent format that you have going on here.
Very difficult.
Andrew and I have had many long-standing conversations about sports that have been way over 55 seconds. So it's true to wrangle those thoughts in. You're doing a hell of a job. But Andrew, buddy, I want to know about the Patriots. I want to know about what the Bears are up against on Monday night. If there's any chance in hell they can maybe squeeze out a victory. But the Patriots are 3-2 at this point of the season. What's your evaluation on this team? Are they living up to expectations? Are they not seeing expectations? What's the temperature in the room with Belichick and these? Some coaches have titles, others don't. What's your evaluation so far?
Yeah, so they actually just got back to 500. They started 1-3, 1-2 with Mac Jones, lose at Green Bay, a couple wins now against the Lions and the Browns, and they're still kind of hanging in the basement. And so it's difficult to find themselves at a team that is expected to be around 500, frankly, 8-9 or 9-8 here in New England. And you've got the curveball that Mac Jones, instead of making this year 2 leap, kind of regresses a little bit, at least statistically. And part of that is the new offense. The coaches you alluded to, Matt Patricia is the offensive play caller. He's not recognized as such, but that's really what's going on here. And Bill Belichick spending 90% of his time with the offense. So there's a lot of change. Obviously, some poor defenses that Bailey Zappi has now faced where, they've got this thing around town called Zappi Fever, which has been a lot of fun. But, I think they're starting to find their equilibrium. 3-3 is where they should be. It's just a matter of, can they make the leap if and when Mac is expected to come back on Monday night.
Yeah, and Andrew, you led in right to for where I want to go next, which is the Patriots quarterback situation, which has definitely been a hot topic of conversation, after Bailey Zappi's hot start in place of an injured Mac Jones. So I'm curious, what is your take on the Zappi fever that is overtaking New England? And can we expect to see Jones or Zappi on Monday night, or is it too early to tell?
My sense is that Mac will be able to play. We had a report from Doug Kyde of Pro Football Focus, says Mac is about 85 to 90%. That should be good enough by Monday night. And Monday will also be a day after the 4-week, marker from when he got injured against the Ravens. So 4 weeks is typical for a high ankle sprain. He's been pushing to play behind the scenes, I can tell you. As far as the fever goes, it's been fun. I don't know. Like, this is normally something I would lean away from, back off, be like, let's be sensible. He's a backup. He's a 4th-round rookie. If people, thought was wildly overdrafted, what are we doing? But what the hell? It's mid-October in the league. You guys know sometimes you just got to find your fun when you can have it. And that's what we're doing here with Bailey Zappi. So I lean into the FIVA, as we say it. But, the kid's producing, to his credit, over completion percentage, over 70, 5 touchdowns, 1 pick. Like, that'll get the job done.
One thing that the Bears have not done well this year is defend the run, allowing about 160 yards on the ground per game. What's the latest on Damian Harris's hamstring injury? And if he can't go, is Ramondre Stevenson capable of carrying the load if he can't go?
Stevenson definitely is. And those aren't my words. Those are Bill Belichick's, who has been effusive. And on the Belichick standard and scale, effusive in his praise of Ramondre Stevenson, who I've affectionately nicknamed Seasonson for anyone who plays fantasy. John, I think you're in that realm. Because the kid produces. Look, like even last year as a rookie, you look at some of his deeper numbers. He's forcing more missed tackles or at a higher efficiency than Damian Harris. He's creating more on his own. He's better against zone runs, which they've pivoted to a little bit more here this season. So those numbers indicate to me that if he needs to continue taking on a larger role, and he had 2 touchdowns in Cleveland, he can do it. I don't know exactly about Harris's hamstring because they can be a little finicky where, you push it a little bit too far. That sends you back a week or two. But the fact that he traveled to Cleveland last week, I don't think was them kind of putting on a dog and pony show for the Browns, because you don't have to for the Cleveland Browns, but also just a good sign for him that this might actually be a 1 to 2 week injury. If he does come back, they'll split carries just like they did before he got hurt.
And the Patriots have been a little banged up at wide receiver this season, and Kendrick Bourne is experiencing a bit of a slump this season so far. So I'm curious, what is your evaluation of New England's receiving corps this season, and who are some guys we should keep an eye out on Monday night?
Yeah, so I would definitely look for Jacoby Myers. He is unsexy, unspectacular, and I'm not talking about how the man looks, but he just gets open, in the way that Julian Edelman before he kind of had the beard that John's got going on, before Julian was doing commercials, the gritty, this is just Jacoby. He's a regular dude. He has told me, I want to be, quote, a security blanket. I don't know many receivers who just want to be a plan B, but that's Jacoby Myers. He's leading in catches, yards, targets, all of that. Behind that, it's really, an equal opportunity receiving core, because Kendrick Bourne, I was talking about deeper numbers, his separation last year, best on the team. His yards per reception, best on the team. He was their most explosive player. Well, he's taking a back seat now because Devonte Parker is this kind of sideline jump ball catch specialist that they've been looking to a lot. Zappi looks to him in key downs. You've also got Tyquan Thornton, speedy second rounder out of Baylor, 4.28 of the combine. That shows up. They gave him 3 carries in his first game last week against Cleveland, and the dude's 180 pounds. So it doesn't take much more than a stiff breeze to knock him over, but if you don't get to him, he goes to the house untouched on a 19-yard jet sweep. So between Thornton's speed, Parker on the sideline, and Jacoby Myers just somehow finding a way over the middle, those would be my top 3. But everyone here locally has also been clamoring for Bourne. The problem is he's now got turfed up.
The Patriots have a pair of high-priced tight ends in Jono Smith and Hunter Henry. Injuries have played a part in that throughout their tenure in New England. What can Bears fans expect from that duo into Monday night, if anything?
Yeah, I wouldn't be too concerned. I don't know what the Bears' numbers are against tight ends this year. Hunter Henry would be the one I'd be more concerned about, specifically in the red zone. I mean, he had 9 touchdowns last year, catching passes from Mac Jones. The two of them are actually neighbors. So, look, they're close, relied upon. Jonnu Smith did break out. It was really just 2 catches, one of which went for 53 yards, because he's a catch and run kind of player. But from what I can tell, their tackling has actually been okay this year. So I wouldn't see him springing for long runs like he did against Cleveland. I don't think they'll play a ton of 12 personnel, especially now that Thornton's back for them and allows them to stretch the field in a way that really they haven't since maybe Brandon Cooks and before that Randy Moss. So yeah, I would look for Henry on 3rd downs and in the red zone and probably not worry too much about Jonnu Smith if I'm a Bears fan.
So the Patriots have given up 11 sacks through 6 games, which is tied for 9th in the NFL. And I was curious, what's been your evaluation of this Patriots offensive line? And can a struggling Bears pass rush find success and get home on Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi, whoever it be?
Yeah, I was looking at that Bears pass rush today, guys. I don't want to say sorry too many times in your own podcast, but we got to get some more, especially if Robert Quinn's out the door. But look, I think they do have an opportunity to find pressure, particularly on the right side, where Isaiah Wynn has had a sack and a penalty in 4 straight games. So that's a guy that I think they could put Robert Quinn across from a whole lot and just kind of let him go to work. Myles Garrett, the Patriots had a plan for last week. He still ended up, according to Pro Football Focus, with 8 pressures. I had him for about half that, but the bottom line was he was affecting play. So you're really looking at the 2 tackles. On the interior, they've been rock solid, even with the first rounder in Cole Strange, who, he might have some troubles with a power, some more bull rush here and there. But Isaiah Wynn is the revolving door next to the brick wall as far as protection is concerned in the last 4 games.
Let's switch sides of the ball now, because the one thing the Bears have done well on the offensive side of the ball is run. So are there going to be opportunities against the rush defense of New England for David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert and even Justin Fields with his legs? Will there be any opportunities? Are there any weaknesses in the run defense in New England?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they had the 2nd worst run defense of the league going to Green Bay in week 4, and they've gotten it tightened up since then. And coming out against Detroit, who they shut down, and then Cleveland, Nick Chubb had something like 70 yards or maybe 56. I think they had 70 total, somewhere in that range where it's not doing any damage. The issue for them was, in particular against Baltimore, some of those option runs. So I would, if I'm a Bears fan, love to see Justin Fields as involved as possible in this run game, kind of add an extra gap. And where they've really struggled is in the C gap. So you're looking outside the tackle next to the tight end, where you don't have a lot of sturdy edge setters. And so teams started to hammer that area with plays like counter or some different reads, like I mentioned with the Ravens. Lamar Jackson went for over 100. First time that's ever happened to a Bill Belichick coach Patriots team. So yeah, I think there are opportunities. I think if they have any sort of new wrinkles they haven't shown yet, now would be the week just to get back on track. And so there are cracks in there. It's just going to be a little bit more difficult between the tackles, and they need to go straight ahead.
I want to go to a user question here from J2K. He says Belichick is known to throw a lot at young quarterbacks. How much does he mix things up to confuse Justin Fields?
Yeah, I think you'll certainly see some disguises. I think they also look at Mooney as probably a guy they want to keep, a safety over the top in key situations, or maybe some shades. They didn't double Amari Cooper last week a whole lot, and those two are obviously not identical players, but they've been more confident in their man coverage than I expected going into the season, with a rookie and Jack Jones as a 4th-round pick, Jalen Mills and Jonathan Jones when healthy. So I think they might just play it straight up and have like a late safety rotation. I don't think you're going to see this myriad of coverages or split safety stuff where you're doing zone on one side and man on the other. But I think they will try to confuse him, because they know that he'll hold on to the ball a little bit longer, and they're going to take a really controlled pass rush to kind of squeeze them in the pocket as opposed to giving him rushing lane. So there will be a little disguise, but they've been pretty straight ahead with their man coverage on passing downs.
And kind of sticking with that regard, the Bears have obviously the worst passing offense in the NFL. And assuming that, Justin Fields can actually find a little sense of a comfortability in the pocket, do you think he'll be able to find success against this Patriots secondary?
I think he'll have opportunities. I mean, at this point, you should just take your shots downfield. Like, I think when we talk about the league as a whole progressing in terms of scoring, the amount of explosive plays, like, quarterbacks have been more conservative, afraid of making those interceptions. And if you've been struggling like the Bears are, you might as well lean into that risk. Boomer bust plays down the field, where if that gets picked off 40 yards downfield, just call it an arm punt. Like, that's it. You gave the ball away. It's going to happen anyway. It's just coming off a foot or out of your hand. So I think, yes, they can look deep. Jack Jones, I mentioned, a 4th-round rookie. He's really like a J.C. Jackson light in that, he plays man coverage very well. He's aggressive, but he's been smoked a couple times when you look at the all-22 in terms of out and ups, other double moves, post corners. And so they just haven't hit those yet. And I think the Bears are definitely going to look to attack him deep because, look, we all know Justin Fields is one of the prettiest deep balls in the league. He just doesn't have the help or the time to get it off. So, yeah, I think they should definitely take some shots downfield.
Sticking with this because the Bears and Bears fans are so Justin Fields centric at this point because the entire spotlight of the season is basically based around his progression, his success, and what he could potentially mean for the franchise. He is running for his life on a lot of these plays. And regardless of what some of these analytics say about how he's, has a lot of time to throw, mainly because he's evading pass rushers or the blockers aren't engaging. And so it's not really a winning a block if you don't engage anyone. What will New England do as far as a pass rush to get at him? Is there anything specifically that they do on the defensive front or anything that we should be aware of?
Yeah, I would say it's tough to know because I think what they're going to prioritize also is stopping, as we heard Belichick talk a lot today about the two backs. So they might just go, we're going to load the box, at which point you're probably taking players in from like the slot area where against mobile quarterbacks, they send a lot of nickel blitzes, right? So you're blitzing speed with speed is a way to kind of try to contain him and get him down. They did it against Lamar Jackson. What they've also done is brought some backside safeties. Like, I don't know what it was about Jared Goff's tape, but they sent safety blitzes from his backside like 4 times in the first 5 drives going, I don't know if they just don't think he can't see it or if it's a way to get it faster against their protection. So it's going to be an answer of where do they think they can exploit his protections versus how do they balance that with the run game and whatever personnel they have in the field. But yeah, part of me thinks they'll also want to rush 5 a lot because I think against bad offensive lines, you just want to generate as many one-on-ones as you can. And eventually, like, the dam will break somewhere. But they might just go, we can rush 4 successfully and not blitz at all and just hope that maybe he throws us one if we give him too much time and keep eyes on him playing maybe even a little bit more zone. There are a lot of things they could do.
And with the NFL trade deadline fast approaching, have you heard anything about the Patriots being buyers or sellers?
They want N'Keal Harry back so badly. No. So no, I don't know anything about that just yet. My colleague at the Boston Herald, Kerry is doing a long piece for Sunday about what they should do and they could do. Obviously, the trade market is all about where the buyers can meet the sellers. What do you have to give? And I think they would love to offload Nelson Aguilar in terms of his contract. He's on the books entering the year for about $15 million, so that should be down to about 9 or 10 the way we are now a third into the season. But beyond that, I just don't know that they're going to make a move. I think they see 2023 is really their sweet spot. Mac Jones in year 3, the rookies that they're leaning on heavily so far will be more developed. So if anything, they might add, but it would be kind of a distressed asset kind of deal where, I'm sure they'd love Robert Quinn, but I don't think they're going to give up, a pick in 23 that the Bears might want to kind of go get him.
You brought up N'Keal Harry, so I got to ask you because you're a guy that watched him closely. You were covering that organization. He's been activated to at least, maybe play or at least practice. So what is the scouting report on N'Keal Harry? What can he bring to this thirsty Bears receiving core that just needs a spark, that needs maybe a big body, needs a red zone target, quite frankly? What can N'Keal Harry do for the Bears without obviously not living up to that first round draft pick?
Yeah, and I'll say this for N'Keal Harry because he got a lot of crap out here in New England as a first-round pick. Who in a lot of markets, you underperform or don't produce, you're 1, 2, or 3. It's going to happen. But like he was a hardworking kid once he got focused. I think halfway through his rookie year. That was also 2019 when Brady knew he was leaving New England. Body language was bad. It was a bad receiving core. Their playoff Super Bowl hopes faltered down the stretch, and he was on injured reserve for the first half of the year. So he really didn't have much of a shot. His rookie year, the problem was it couldn't work with Cam Newton or Mac Jones after that. And at some point, that's a you problem. As far as what he can do in Foxborough on Monday night, I think what I just alluded to, those deep balls down the sideline, like give him a chance to win jump balls at 6'4", 225, because the kid I just mentioned, Jack Jones, is 5'11", 175. So like he can win big bodied and those sideline throws. And if they're incomplete or he doesn't catch them, whatever. Okay, it's 2nd and 10. You just do it again. Like you have to deal with some sort of risk and failure in this. You'd like to lean on him for some sort of slants where you can use that big frame to shield off defenders, again, against a specifically man coverage heavy defense like the Patriots. But I think at this point, you just got to take shots and hope he can go above the rim. That's what they wanted him to do in New England. It never happened. It's probably why Devonte Parker's here. But, I think that helps you play to the strength of Justin Fields and at least give N'Keal Harry a shot for something that he should do versus try to shake someone out of the slot or, face better corners than a Jack Jones, who I mentioned is just still a 4th-round rookie, as good as he's been.
Mac Jones will always have some kind of affiliation with Justin Fields because of the same draft class. All those quarterbacks that went in the first round will always kind of be compared to one another. What is the overall, I guess, right now, what are the fans, what's their take on Mac Jones? Do they see him as the long-term guy? Does New England see him as the long-term guy? And what about those rumors that there's an attitude problem in New England?
The best. My friends at the Globe. So the deal with Mac Jones is I think things have just been put on pause, and not in any sort of existential way or any sort of serious way. But look, the guy's been hurt. What happens when you hurt is you go to the sideline and the show goes on without you. So he'll hit resume, I think, and hit play again on Monday night, and we'll see how it happens. But he is their franchise quarterback. He is the starter. He is a better quarterback than Bailey Zappi. And at some point, the conversation doesn't need to be a whole lot more complicated than that. And credit to the kid for coming off the bench as being a healthy scratch weeks 1 through 3 to playing clean football. But he's had very defined reads. He's used a lot of play action, a lot more screens. And those are things that Mac Jones wasn't doing. They're having him throw downfield and more riskier plays, like I just mentioned with Justin Fields. And that helped depress some of his numbers. I think if the Patriots make the offense a little more friendly for Mac Jones, that could still work. What's his ultimate ceiling? I don't think anywhere higher than like the number 10 to 12 quarterback in the league. But as we saw last year with 2 number 4 seeds in the Super Bowl, if you have enough of an infrastructure around them and good coaching and enough talent on your roster, you can make the Super Bowl. It doesn't happen a whole lot, but like Matthew Stafford, no one's talking about him as a top 10 quarterback right now, and really much of his time in Detroit. So they just need to build up the roster around him. His accuracy is elite. He processes really well. The arm's not necessarily there, and he's not creating on his own. So that's where I think they just need to do a better job stylistically with the offense and do some of the same things with him for the rest of the year as they've been doing with Bailey Zappi.
It's not like that the Patriots haven't tried to surround him with talent. We talked about the 2 tight ends. You talk about, Nelson Aguilar's contract. What do you see New England doing? Because we have an idea of what Chicago needs to do in the offseason. What do you anticipate New England doing in the offseason? Are they also going to try to maybe load up on some more weapons to maybe help Mac Jones out?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry will be here next year, so that rolls out in more tight ends. I think you're going to have a new right tackle because Isaiah Wynn just cannot keep spinning around in circles for all these pass rushers to go by him. And then otherwise, the receivers who are under contract next year, Parker, Tyquan Thornton, and Kendrick Moore, that's like a decent trio. But I think they would still like to add at that position. Running back room is set. I think Damian Harris is probably going to walk, but they drafted 2 rookies to help replace him. And then defensively, I think you just start adding more playmakers. Like they took we'll bet on middle-aged veterans or, a lot of lower cost opportunities, hoping one of these lottery tickets hit at inside linebacker. And it could be Mack Wilson from Cleveland or a 5th round pick from 2 years ago. None of them have really hit. So like the linebacker play is a real sore spot there. I would expect them to be aggressive in that area, kind of like they were with Matt Judon, who's been their best player and really paid off in a way that even exceeded my expectations, even though he's the highest paid defender in Patriots history. So it's really going to be that. You'll have to replace Devin McCourty and probably add another corner or 2. But offensively, like this is pretty much it. Maybe they add a receiver, but they've never, ever spent big on the number 1. And that's why I think the receivers now are probably what you're going to have moving forward.
Before I get your prediction for the game, I do want to know if you have any inclination of, Bill Belichick's been doing this a long time and many people may think that he's ageless and he could probably do this till he's 100, but in New England, does he have another 5-6 years in him, or is he pushing to win now because he may not be around in 2 or 3 years? What's the indication in New England of how long Bill Belichick actually wants to do this, and is there a successor in place, or is because we thought maybe Josh McDaniels would be that guy, but obviously that's not going to happen. So how long will Belichick be around in New England?
It's a good question. And it's funny. Like I remember when we did this show 4 years ago, I don't think you asked me that, but I had people asking me that at the time in interviews where I just got the job. How are you asking me? I just started in July as my first training camp. And we're here doing the same thing 4 years later. So the best intel is just people in that building who say, I've seen no change from him, year 70 to 67 or 63 or wherever you want to go back. Like he's just always been about ball. He was literally raised in a film room with his dad, who was a legendary scout at Navy, before then played in the league for a year or 2 with the Lions, coached in college, bounced around all over the place. And this is all that he's known. So I think he wants to extend this as long as possible. We see him walking through the locker room sometimes with lifting gloves. Like they could be yours, John. And he's doing some sort of squats or some deadlifts. Like the guy's getting after and trying to sustain. And I think, yes, absolutely, he would like to surpass Don Shula, the all-time wins list for your career as a head coach. which would put him, I think, at least at 2.5 to 3 more years. So 5 years, maybe not, because the dude's going to be 74, 75 at that point. But I think he'll certainly ride out the end of Mac Jones's first contract, which still has a couple more years.
I believe he has a chance to, if my memory serves me, I think we actually had a user comment on here say Bill Belichick has a chance to pass George Halas for second all-time in wins at 325 if they happen to win on Monday night. So just an added little flavor into that game. So let's talk about that game. Andrew, you don't have to. We're going to know if you're lying. So go ahead, tell us what you predict on Monday night. How do you see this playing out? Any kind of, you don't have to give us an exact score, but what do you think is going to happen?
Well, let me start with the good, because if you go back to the Patriots' peak last season, they're the number 1 seed in the AFC mid-December. They beat the Bills in a very fluky, windstorm game on Monday Night Football, their last Monday Night Football game. And they go into their bye week and things are great. They lose 4 of their next 5. And the first of those games was at Indianapolis, coming off of said bye against Matt Eberflus. Apologies to coach. And they gave the Patriots real fits offensively. And that was a team that was healthier. Mac Jones was at the peak of his powers, should have been rested. And they had to play catch up. And that's not an area where the Patriots are fit to play catch up. So I think there's something to this scheme where, he doesn't have the same personnel, but he does have more time. The Colts were also coming off of a bye. And they have nothing to lose. Like, they know they need a spark. And I think if they can get out to a lead and then ride, Montgomery and Herbert and even Justin Fields and some of those option runs, they can control and set the terms of engagement here for a quarter, maybe 2 or 3 if it starts defensively. The problem is, I think just the better team, the longer a game goes on, is going to win out. I think, though, this game is ugly. I think this gets to be somewhere in the 23-12, 23-9 range. But if you're a Bears fan, I don't want to give you false hope. I just think even with Mac Jones back, there's enough here for the Bears to hang around and make it hard on them. And when you look at the number of points they've given up in the second half, defensively in the entire year, it's tops, if not top 5 in the league. So they're adjusting well. It's just problems, as you can't come from behind. But I think they can control the game and be close and play the game they want to play. Ultimately, though, I think, that kid Thornton is something else. He's the 4.2 speed is hard to defend. I don't care who you are. So, yeah, 23-12, let's say, Pats.
I think that's a very modest and considerate prediction. So we
guard the Patriots
nice.
more. Let me
you.
tell you, I'm not being nice because we're friends. This is my second time back, but I just said this on TV, so you can go back and see the tape. Ugly game. I might have said a few more points for the Bears here, but 23 is where I capped out.
We appreciate that. But hey, before we kick you out of here, let our listeners and viewers know where they can find your work, where they can listen to you, what you're working on, what's going on.
Yeah, I appreciate you, John. So you mentioned the Pats Interference podcast, PATS, just launched this year. It's been a lot of fun rotating guests, not always from opposing fan bases, but we get into a lot of different topics. We'll have a full preview out Friday morning. Lots of film stuff in addition to catching up on things here in New England. You can find me on Twitter @_Andrew Callahan. Big story in the Kill Harry coming out Friday morning. So look out for that. And otherwise, just pretty much everything that's going on here in New England, you'll find on my Twitter or thebostonherald.com.
Patriots beat writer for the Boston Herald and the host of the Pats Interference podcast, Andrew Callahan. Andrew, thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us about the Patriots. I'll see you soon, bud.
Sounds good. Feed the Bears. Thanks, guys.
What a terrible hashtag. We'll be back with more Buffone 55 right after this.
And look, I loved Rex Grossman. I'm not trying to get you to besmirch him in any way, but it seemed like he didn't have it at Super Bowl 41. Maybe it was the rain, but if Lovey inserts Brian Greasy at some point in the second half, could that have been the difference and you all would be wearing rings here in 2022 for Super Bowl 41 champions?
I don't know if Brian Greasy would have changed anything, but I definitely think that the game was too big for Rex that day.
The one thing I've learned is everything's got to click. And if it doesn't, things can go sour. I mean, both teams are in the Super Bowl for a reason. They're good teams, and you get there. Part of it's luck, part of it's good play. But if things don't click exactly the way you want them to, it can go south.
Well, welcome back to Buffone 55. Now it's time for our B55 segment. That's when I ask John 5 questions, and his responses must be completed within 55 seconds. The 55 is John's tribute to the great Doug Buffone, his uncle, who played 15 seasons with the Bears and wore number 55. So, John, It's been a while, but you ready to roll?
Yeah, I guess I'm in mid-season form. Is it the mid-season? I don't know. The weeks just kind of roll together, and the primetime games keep stacking up, and I can't keep track anymore. So let's give it the old college try.
Okay. So, John, you've had about 6 days to sit and ponder this Bears loss to the Commanders. So, kind of a two-part question here. First, are you over it? And what was the most frustrating aspect, and I know there were a lot, of last Thursday's loss? You know the drill. 55 seconds.
Well, from the frustration comes a certain numbness. We had our initial rage when the game was over, and I think not talking about it kind of helped. I tried to disengage from the anguish and the fury, but now that we're talking about it again, we kind of just ripped off the scab. So now I'm irritated again. The most frustrating part of that game was that Washington didn't win the game. Chicago lost the game. The Bears had every opportunity to win that ball game. They should have been up 2 scores at halftime. The Commanders were only moving the ball through penalties. And once again, if you hold a team to 12 freaking points in the NFL in the year 2022, there's no reason to lose a game. The red zone offense is just mystifying. If they played on an 80-yard field, things would be much different. But this is a game that I circled back in August as a win because I didn't have much faith in the Commanders, and the Bears did just about everything they could to not win that game. This was probably more frustrating than the Giants loss, and that game was really frustrating.
Yeah, I was going to say this loss is probably the most frustrating that we've experienced, not even this season, but in a few years, it feels like, because like you said, they should have won this game. There are plenty of opportunities. The fact that they scored a season low 7 points against the worst opponent that they've faced so far is just unacceptable. And especially like you mentioned, the red zone offense, not only were they in the red zone, they were inside the 5-yard line 3 times and could not punch it in. And it's really frustrating because, like you said, that's a game where I know they're jockeying for draft position and you want them to get a high draft pick, but there are a few games that they should win, and that was one of them. So after that, I was kind of like going through the schedule, and I'm like, how many wins are actually left? It was just one of those losses where you're just like, oh man, can it get worse than this? God, I hope not.
That's one we wanted. That's one I wanted. That's one all Bears fans wanted, and that's whenever it's one of those things where there weren't going to be any moral victories in that game unless they won.
Absolutely. So, John, we were all pretty adamant back in August that the Bears weren't going to be the worst team in the league. But with a 2-4 record, they aren't technically the worst team, but the back end of the schedule is pretty gnarly. Are you still confident that this team can get back or can get to 5 or 6 wins this season? 55 seconds. Go.
So I'm confident that they aren't the worst team in the league. However, they've lost 2 games that I had circles as wins in the Giants and Commanders. Now, the Giants may be a little bit better than we thought, but either way, the winnable games are shrinking. Beating New England could go a long way this week, especially if they have a backup quarterback in there. But after that, you're looking for winnable games, and from weeks 10 to 12, you have the Lions, Falcons, and Jets. You can maybe get 2 of those, and maybe you still won from the last 2 games between the Lions and Vikings. But to your point, they have a 3-game stretch against the Packers, the Eagles, and the Bills that no one is excited about. By the way, getting the Bills on Christmas Eve, Merry friggin' Christmas. So all of that to say, I think there are still about 5 winnable games left on the schedule. One would hope that this young Bears team will improve as the season progresses and they can still get to 5 to 6 wins. And trust me, this isn't the type of conversation I want to be having. Can my favorite team somehow make it to 5 or 6 wins? But I got to be realistic.
Yeah, looking at that schedule, I mean, yeah, that stretch, and like, why do they want to do that to us on Christmas? I'm like, can I just enjoy my Christmas in peace and, maybe gift us the Lions at that point? No, that stretch of playing the Eagles and the Bills, and I know the Packers have been in shambles, but let's be real, Aaron Rodgers is going to come in here and to throttle them again. So, I mean, it's going to be rough, but, looking through the schedule, like you said, even those easy wins like the or that we thought were going to be easy, the Falcons, and the Jets, they've looked pretty good this year too, a lot better than the Bears. And I think maybe the only team I'm confident that they can definitely beat is going to be the Lions. I don't know that I don't think they're going to sweep them, but I think that game in Chicago, they have a really good chance because the Lions they're somehow worse than the Bears always. They always find new ways to lose. So, I mean, looking at it, do they get to 5 or 6 at this? I'm kind of leading towards 5. I think they can get another couple wins in here. And I think, like you said, at this point, the best bet is that the Vikings lock up the NFC North and a playoff spot, and they play their backups, and the Bears get a win to end the season. So, hey.
Yeah, but you're going to have the other side saying, "Hey, if they lose that game, they just increase their draft position by 2 or 3 spots." That's a conversation we're going to have down the line. I have full confidence in we're going to have that conversation at some point. But I think the schedulers did kind of hey, the spaceship graphics up. Here we go. The schedule.
Yes.
If you're watching this on YouTube or anywhere else, you see the schedule graphic up there. So you see that they have the Patriots week 7, and that's, they could potentially pull something out there. Don't love that game against Dallas. We're not sure what the quarterback situation is going to be like in Miami when they're home against the Dolphins. We'll see. But then week 10, 11, and 12, I think is where they can make the most hay. They got the Lions, the Falcons, and the Jets. And then you get Green Bay week 13, not promising. You have your bye week 14, where if you're a playoff team, that's a great time to have a bye. You kind of have that late, resting week. And then
It's good on us.
Yeah, and then week 15, 16, Eagles and Bills on Christmas Eve. I think they have the Lions on it was at New Year's Day, so maybe you can enjoy your New Year's Day by watching them beat the Lions, and then they finish the season with Minnesota as they normally do. So I can see 5 wins and upside 6. At the beginning of the season, I think I had them slated in for potentially 7 or 8, but that's certainly not going to happen now as far as I'm concerned. But you know what? That's the schedule they were dealt. It looked like a nice schedule at the time. Didn't look like it was going to be too daunting, but they have slipped up. So it is what it is.
I mean, to be fair, in all but one of their losses, it's been 1-score games, and they should have beat the Giants, should have beat the Vikings, should have beat the Commanders, but hey, what are you going to do? So they're keeping things competitive. So while we look at that schedule, and I know there are some really big playoff contenders on there, but when you look at the schedule and everything, I mean, they're going to stay competitive. So hey, they could surprise us with some wins there.
They stay competitive against the Bills. That's a win.
I will take that win.
That'll be a Christmas gift for me.
That definitely would. Just please don't make it miserable. Please and thank you. So, John, with teams beginning to emerge as contenders and pretenders, the trade rumors are beginning to fly. And recently, the Cardinals just traded for disgruntled Panthers receiver Robbie Anderson, sending Carolina a 6th and 7th round pick. Do you think the Bears should have been in on Anderson? And do you think that there are any trades in the Bears' future? 55 seconds are on the clock.
Well, Anderson got booted from the Panthers last game by his own coach, and he was seen jawing back and forth with the position coach. So whether you see that as passion for the game or being disruptive, it's quite possible that Ryan Poles sees that and thinks, what's to keep him from doing that on our sideline? Because it's not like the Bears offense is a well-oiled machine. And once again, I don't think Poles is in the business of liquidating too many draft assets. I think he likes to stockpile. But at any rate, I'm still not really sure what the other trade targets could be. Chase Claypool had a great game with Pittsburgh, and they may be willing to deal him, but I'm guessing there will be a few teams in on him, and the price could get a little higher than Ryan Poles wants to go. I don't know if Denzel Mims is still a possibility or even of interest. He's been a healthy scratch all year. We talked about some of the potential targets in New England. That doesn't appear too likely. It's obvious that the receiving core needs help. I'm just not sure where it's coming from. Josh Gordon just got cut from the Titans practice squad. How's that sound? I'm kidding. I just don't. I think they're stuck with what they have right now.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think if anything, the Bears are going to be sellers at this point. I mean, we've seen what Ryan Poles did with the roster. And, I think Robert Quinn is a big one. I've seen some other names like David Montgomery floated around, Roquan Smith, both players who are not under contract next year. So if your plan is to move on from them, why not get some draft capital in return? But yeah, at this point, it's hard to see him making a move, but when you look at the free agent market, there's not a lot of big name receivers there. So, Poles has a lot of work to do in this roster, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So, I mean, you're hoping that he was kind of in on that, kind of like poking around, seeing if Robbie Anderson was just kind of get like a feel. You hope that he's out there trying to make moves, thinking for the future, thinking about Justin Fields. But yeah, at this point, I don't see them being buyers in the market, but I could definitely see them being sellers.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I think there would be way more sellers than buyers, and we'll see if they could potentially make a trade in the offseason for someone that's of a higher grade than a Robbie Anderson. We'll just put it that way. So I guess patience will have to be a virtue in this situation.
Patience, that's our favorite word
as
Bears fans. So, John, the Bears have a chance to make up for a poor primetime performance with a good primetime performance on Monday night against New England. And you said that you're grading each game on a sliding scale. So what do the Bears need to do this week in order for the game to be considered a success? You got 55 seconds.
Yeah, the baseline for success is changing every single week. You know what I really want to see? One of those drives where everything seems to be working well and they're moving the football and they get down to the 6-yard line and they actually score a touchdown. That's the main thing I want to see. Finish a drive, get in the end zone from the red zone. I want to see sustained drives that result in 7 points. And it seems like a big ask, but I think it's a pretty simple ask. If you're able to get to the 10-yard line, punch the ball in the end zone. And then we come back to the standard answer. Everyone will be watching every single throw from Justin Fields, as they should. He's the spotlight of this entire season. It's not about the playoffs or championships, or hell, it's not even about wins most weeks anymore. So it is about whether or not Justin Fields can take a step forward and progress. I saw something in the chat room last week that progress isn't linear, and I 100% agree with that. So I'm hopeful we continue to see flashes and improvement from Justin Fields while recognizing that he's going to miss throws sometimes or make a wrong read.
Yeah, and as evidenced by how often, Justin Fields comes up when we're talking to, when we're talking about opponents, that's what every game's going to be about, is Fields making progress, especially coming after that Vikings game. It just felt like there was a lot of optimism, right? It's like, okay, so yeah, he's not in the perfect situation, but hey, there was incremental progress and you saw it there until that Washington game where it's kind of like a 1 step forward, 2 step back kind of thing. So like you said, I think all eyes are going to be on Justin Fields. We want to see progress from him, and you want to see the offensive line step up and help him. You want to see receivers step up. Maybe N'Keal Harry playing against his former team. He's had this game circled on his calendar for a while. Maybe he steps up. And like you said, the red zone offense, I want to see just improvement overall from the offense because, we've seen with the defense this season, they've had some a rough go of it at times. And they had their best game of the season when they needed to and when they should have against a really bad Commanders offense. So I would like to see the offense take a step forward. Like you said, when you are in the red zone, you need to score. And it's hard to believe there was a time earlier this season when the Bears actually had the 5th best red zone offense. I mean, they weren't down there a lot, but, they were punching it in when they needed to in the beginning. So I'd like to see them get back to that, obviously. So, I think all eyes are going to be glued on the offense and keeping this thing close and competitive because you're going up against Bill Belichick, who is the GOAT. And if you can somehow manage to just stay competitive in this game and not make as many mistakes that obviously doomed them last week, I'll take that.
The N'Keal Harry revenge game is upon us. And yes, Bill Belichick is notoriously good against young quarterbacks. So that's a bit terrifying. But progress.
Sorry, Justin.
Progress. Just want to see it. Yeah.
Could be in for a long night, Justin. Sorry about that. Mm-hmm. Okay, so John, we're going to finish with this. After the loss last week, Bears fans began engaging in, shall we call it, spirited conversations about what the reason is behind the Bears losing 3 straight. So, John, what direction do you point the finger? No clock for this one. Good luck.
Man, these things really are cyclical. I think it's human nature to want to boil things down to one troublesome aspect, eradicate it or fix it, and then everything will be wrapped up in a neat little package. We did this with the last regime. Who are we blaming solely? Is it a Matt Nagy problem? Is it a Mitch problem? Is it a Ryan Pace problem? Is it a Chuck Pagano problem? Is it a tight end problem? Remember that brief moment in time where we believed that Nagy's system was so tight end reliant that once they had 2 formidable tight ends, everything was going to be awesome. Fast forward to 2022, we find ourselves once again trying to oversimplify the problem instead of admitting that there are multiple problems that need multiple solutions. Is it Justin Fields' fault? Is it the offensive line's fault? Is it Luke Getsy's fault? Is it the skill position's fault? Is it Matt Eberflus's fault? Is it Ryan Poles' fault? And everyone has to pick a side, and everyone is more concerned about being right than seeing that this blow-up year is what we've been asking for a couple of seasons. When you blow it up, that doesn't mean you fire everyone and then you automatically go 12-5 the next season. The Bears had limited mobility with the cap, and Poles didn't want to kick the can down the road like Ryan Pace was doing. Justin Fields is going through growing pains with bad weapons. But we live in a microwave society where if the guy doesn't get off the bus a Hall of Famer, he's automatically a bust. It's a first-year defensive head coach that wasn't handed a great roster and is getting his young defense to play hard. It's a first-year play caller that is trying to navigate his scheme with a bad offensive line and subpar weapons. All of these things are allowed to be true. Instead, we try to find one thing that's wrong, and we need to fix it, and if you don't agree, you're a moron. I beg you, please, do not make this rebuild year any worse than it already is. We'll be back with more Buffone 55 right after this. Welcome back to Buffone 55. It's time for a segment we call Buffone's Basement. That's where Alyssa and I go down and try to vacuum the corn chips off of Aldo Gandia as he's taking his 5th nap of the season. Aldo, how you doing, bud?
5th nap of the day.
Of the day, you're right, yeah.
I'm jealous.
Good show, guys. Andrew is so... we've had Andrew on, this is the 3rd time? I didn't realize how funny he was.
Oh man, Andrew and I go way back. We were actually reporters at the same paper for a while. We have gone through the hardships of being local reporters. So the only way that you can not cry is to laugh sometimes. So it really sharpens your sense of humor when you're in that local journalism realm. And yeah, he is an X and O guy. I tell you what, he had aspirations of being a scout, and he wanted to be a scout. And then the lifestyle of being a scout kind of pushed him away from it. But whenever he was a reporter for Penn State, he would just X and O everything. And I'm watching him draw things up on a whiteboard. I'm like, how are you doing all this? Like, he could be some sort of offensive coordinator. Like, he just knows every position and assignments, and he's a brilliant football mind, and he's putting it to work as a beat reporter. And he has a perfect job because he's from he grew up in Connecticut, grew up a Patriots fan, loved that organization. He was eventually able to go back and be a beat reporter for the Boston Herald for his favorite team growing up. So excellent guest, very knowledgeable. I'm not just saying that because we're friends. He is well equipped to do what he's doing.
Yeah, I might have to tune into his podcast because he knows his stuff, and he presents it very well.
Absolutely. All right, let's go to 3 people that don't know their stuff, except for Alyssa. She knows her stuff. Aldo and I, we're just bags of hot air. But let's start with Justin Fields and what we'd like to see out of him this week, because I love the phrase that progress is not linear, because there's going to be steps back, there's going to be bad games, there's going to be bad throws, there's going to be bad reads. But as long as as long as the flashes continue to grow and eventually the flashes and positives outweigh the negatives, then you're starting to see progress. Aldo, what would you like to see out of Justin Fields against the Patriots in primetime on Monday night?
Pull the trigger, pull the trigger, pull the trigger. And I'm quoting Kurt Warner here, who in his excellent breakdown of the entire Bears team, he didn't blame just Justin Fields for the offensive problems. He said it was a partly scheme. It was partly Justin Fields not pulling the trigger on a lot of plays and just being a one-read quarterback. And it's part players making mistakes. He did an outstanding job of showing probably more than a half dozen plays of Justin having windows to throw the ball, having good protection, and not pulling the trigger. He just is not trusting what he's seeing. And at times he's getting late off of the primary receiver, not throwing to that open receiver, and then looking elsewhere as the rush is starting to come down on him. One of the things you were talking about, John, in your last B55 is, all the Twitter animosity that's going on when you dare to question that Justin Fields is not progressing as well as he could. And when the analytics present that he's had many times 3-4 seconds to throw and then is getting sacked, he has time to throw on many occasions. I'm not making excuses for Sam Mustipher. Sam Mustipher is not a starting center in the NFL. The left guard position is atrocious right now, but he has time to make some throws, enough throws so that this win-loss record could be reversed. And it's just not happening. And so hopefully we start to see that on Monday Night Football, where he's pulling the trigger, to quote Kurt Warner again.
How about you, Alyssa?
Yeah, no, I agree, because that's been the issue for most of the season. And I want to see him have a little more trust like he did against the Vikings. We saw it early on too. Like he was put in a comfortable position early on and he was pulling the trigger. And you want to see that sustained for an entire game. So get him off to a quick start, make him feel comfortable. And you want to see him just kind of execute the offense. And I know Bill Belichick's going to be throwing a lot his way, but that trust has been key, or the distrust, because it's clear he doesn't have trust in his offensive line and his receivers outside of Darnell Mooney, because he even tries to force it to Mooney more often than he should. And then also when he uses his legs, can he please just protect himself? Yeah. Because all of the shots that he took in that game, and every time he was laid out and like took a while to get up, I'm like, oh my gosh, is this the hit where he's going to be out? You know what I mean? So like when he does use his legs, because as we saw, I mean, he's a playmaker. I mean, he can, especially with what Andrew was saying, there should be opportunities for him to do that. So when he does, just please take care of yourself, Justin, and have a little trust and pull the trigger.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that one, Alyssa, and Aldo, your point as well. I think I can appreciate someone wanting to take care of the football and not wanting to turn the ball over, because turnovers can absolutely kill a game. They can be the reason you lose. However, I think there needs to be a happy medium there for the risk reward, and some of those tight windows where I thought Kirk Herbstreit did a really good job in the middle of that game, kind of evaluating what Justin was seeing, and and when a guy has a half a step on you, he's open in the NFL, and you got to trust your arm, you got to trust your receiver that they're going to come down with that. And so I think that's a learning curve, because at Ohio State there's probably 5 yards of separation between the wide receivers and the cornerbacks, and so this is tightening the window a little bit. And also, Alyssa, you made a great point. You can't get better if you're on the bench or you're in the trainer's office, because if he starts getting hurt, or he's banged up, or he's not at 100%, you're not really helping your cause. You're not helping your team, and you're not going to be able to take that next step that we want to see you take. And I love the fact that he's mobile. I love the fact that he can run. He is an absolute playmaker. He can take it to the house anytime either with his arm or his legs, but in this case, his legs. I just want to see him protect himself a little bit. We see this now in San Francisco with Trey Lance out the entire season, didn't play much last year. And so San Francisco's thinking that they just use this huge high draft pick on Trey Lance. He hasn't played in 2 or 3 years now, significant football. And so you're with a guy that you don't know if he's still the guy. So I want to see him be able to play. Best ability, availability. So I want to see him in there healthy and letting it rip. So hopefully they can pull this out, and Justin Fields can take another step forward. We talked a little bit about it in the B55 segment and a little bit with Andrew, but as far as trades go, I see the Bears much more as sellers than buyers in this situation. And that brought up a slew of candidates, and just, whether the rumors have any truth to them, we don't know. But Robert Quinn has apparently been on the trade block. And I was up and down when we talked about this before the year, coming off of 18.5 sacks. That's the Bears record. It's hard to trade a guy like that, because you know what he brings to the locker room with a very young defense. He can be that guy that guys look up to show how to be a professional. I could understand why they kept him. Unfortunately, his production has not been not even close to what it was last year. So now, what do you get for Robert Quinn? You do unload the contract, but maybe earlier before the season, you get a second-round pick, and now maybe you're looking at a fourth-round pick, or even worse, maybe it's just a salary dump at this point. Do you think that Robert Quinn is out the door, Aldo?
I think he is. I know that Ryan Poles, the only way he can really build this team as quickly as possible is by acquiring more draft assets. And the only way to do that right now is to take advantage of the teams who are battling for playoff spots and looking to win Super Bowls, a la the Philadelphia Eagles. They would seem to me to be a really good candidate for Robert Quinn. They've got a great defense, but they may want to add some more firepower in their pass rush and have Robert Quinn come in. And the Eagles have 2 number 1 draft picks. Not to say that they would trade one of those first round picks, the second one, which will be pick number 29, 30, 31, 32. Not to say that they would trade that straight up for Robert Quinn. They, of course, would not do that. But you could send that late first round draft pick and for Robert Quinn and the Bears' third rounder, to do a flip of draft picks, and that would help out this team. But Poles has got to pick up some more draft assets, and that's what I'm hoping we'll get before the trade deadline is over, whether it's Quinn or somebody else.
What do you think, Alyssa? Is Quinn out the door? Who else do you see? Who do you see the Bears potentially unloading before the trade deadline?
Yeah, I definitely think Quinn is out the door. And I mean, that was even a discussion before the start of the season when it sounded like they were trying to trade him before the draft, and kind of had the conversation where, if they didn't deal him before the draft, to get a pick for that draft is kind of like, okay, they weren't going to do that until maybe potentially the trade deadline. And, you're kind of looking at the return now. I mean, we talked about how his trade value was never higher coming off of last season. And then now, obviously, that's going to impact what kind of draft capital you get. But again, Robert Quinn isn't a part of the plans for this team moving forward. So at this point, you do want to get, like Aldo was saying, like Ryan Poles, he said he's going to come in and build this team through the draft, and that you need to acquire more draft capital. We saw him do that in the draft last year. We saw him do it this offseason, trading Khalil Mack. We had an inkling that he was going to try to trade Robert Quinn as well. So I could definitely see that happening. And Philadelphia's a good landing spot, Aldo. I was thinking about that. I know I saw I think ESPN had like some hypothetical trade proposals, and one of them was sending Quinn to the Rams. Like last year with Von Miller. So, I mean, and getting, I think it was 2023 third rounder and a 2024 third rounder. I mean, that's the question, is what are you going to get for him? But I definitely think that he's out the door. And, like I mentioned before, David Montgomery and Roquan Smith are two options. If you don't plan on them being a part of your team moving forward, then you would definitely try to deal them now. But if they are going to be part of your team moving forward, obviously that's not going to happen. So, I mean, we'll see. I mean, this is the first time Ryan Poles' first season. There's a lot of unknowns about him still. So it'll be really interesting to see how he handles the trade deadline.
And I've been hearing a lot about the David Montgomery thing, and a number of things here. One, I don't think they move him unless somebody thinks that they are automatically like a running back away from the Super Bowl, because they'd have to either extend him or just let him play out the season and let him walk in free agency. And second, if you look, unlike the wide receiving free agents next year, the running back free agents are actually really good. Listen to some of the free agents for the running back position in 2023. Saquon Barkley, Kareem Hunt, Rashad Penny, Josh Jacobs, Melvin Gordon, Raheem Mostert, Damian Harris, David Montgomery, Miles Sanders. You have a bunch of guys that are hitting the free agent market that have had production in the NFL. And so that's another reason why you think maybe why the Bears let Montgomery walk, or at least test free agency, where it's just like, go ahead, see what you can get. And then Ryan Poles is like, okay, I'll go ahead and get one of these other guys. I'll go get a Josh Jacobs for $2 million a year if he can't find a landing spot. I'll go get Rashad Penny or a Kareem Hunt for $2 or $3 million, because I don't think that the market is going to be so high that these guys are all going to be 12, 13, 14 million dollar guys in free agency, because it's a pretty big market. So I don't think they necessarily have to say, hey, David, don't even test free agency. Here's $11 million a year. Say, hey, go test it, see what you can get. And if not, come back here, we'll give you $7 million. And so I think it's going to be an interesting offseason, because unlike the wide receiving market, where there's nothing going on in the wide receiver market, there's quite a bit to choose from if you think that you need a jolt at the running back position. What do you think, Aldo?
Yeah, I agree totally. There's could be some teams who are a little bit worried about their rushing attack. I know Austin Eckler, I believe, is injured, so his team could be pursuing a guy like David Montgomery. It's a difficult trade proposition because he is in the final year of his contract, so it would probably be one of those rent-a-player deals, and so that lessens the trade value. You'd probably have to add in a day 3 draft pick to pick up a third rounder and moving David Montgomery. So it's a possibility at this point. If you get a decent offer, maybe that's the way to go, and rely on Ebner and Khalil Herbert, who's averaging 7 yards per carry, and see if he can be your bell cow and have Ebner back him up. The problem with those two guys is that they're horrible at pass blocking. And so you're just making things worse for poor Justin Fields.
I honestly don't think they'd trade Montgomery in the season. And because I don't think, like, if someone comes to you and say, we'll give you a conditional 7th rounder for David Montgomery, I don't think Pole's going to be like, let's sacrifice our only pass blocking running back for a conditional 7th rounder and get our quarterback killed. So I think that a lot of this is going to have to take care of itself after the season. I still think that they maybe try to get something done with Roquan Smith. I don't know if Roquan Smith is playing himself into a $22 million a year contract right now. And if that's what he still thinks he wants, then I still think a franchise tag's coming for Roquan Smith. I think that is the likely, if they want him to stay in this defense and they can't come to some kind of agreement, they franchise tag him and they go from there, and maybe they try to get something done from there. But any surprise guys that you think could maybe hit the bricks? If you go through, I saw that was it one of the offensive line, Riley Reif, potentially on the way, just because of the contract, and someone needs a plug and play guy that may be knowledgeable with their system. Anyone that you think they could potentially get rid of? Because what are you going to get for a Bears offensive lineman right now? A bag of chips. So I mean, like, what? But is there possibly anyone that we could see on the way out?
I don't.
I mean, the only name, and I don't think it's a possibility, but Eddie Jackson's been having a great season. Like, that's the only one, but his contract is just like, I don't see a team, willing to trade for him and take on that contract too. So, I mean, but he's someone who has definitely helped who's definitely improved this season, has been playing lights out on this defense. So, I mean, I don't think it's a possibility, but that would be like a surprise, I guess. Yeah. And again, you're taking away one of your best players on defense. So
Yeah, I think he finally found a comfort zone in this defense where he can flourish and play well opposite Jaquan Brisker. I think he and Brisker have a good chemistry back there, and he's a leader on this secondary now with Kyler Gordon back there and Brisker back there. Eddie Jackson, not just his play on the field, but his presence there is big. So you would have to really blow him away with a offer. You'd have to almost give like a first rounder for Eddie Jackson, which I don't think anyone's going to give. So I think that he's staying put. But yeah, I don't see any other surprise candidates that really where the Bears could be sellers and, quite frankly, buyers. I just don't see them going after someone unless, like I said, the name I keep coming back to, and I've been saying it before the rumors started flying out, is Chase Claypool, where I thought that they might move off of him because the Steelers signed Deontay Johnson to an extension. They draft George Pickens, and they're probably not going to be able to sign Claypool to a big-time deal. So he's 6'4", like 240 pounds, big body guy. I loved him coming out of Notre Dame. Kind of wish the Bears would have went after him in the draft. Mm-hmm. But there's the rumor that came out today that Green Bay is probably interested in him. So, which that makes sense for Green Bay. They need somebody with that big body type that can potentially take over the number one position opposite of Allen Lazard. So if you're in a bidding war, I don't see Ryan Poles saying, hey, why are we going to get into a bidding war mid-season where we're not going to the playoffs? We don't have, championship aspirations. Why am I going to overpay for Chase Claypool just to say that I got him whenever we have, a plan in the offseason? So we'll see. I just don't know who they would bring in at this point and what they would possibly want to give up. It's rare that you're a buyer when you're not a competitor. It's just across all sports. What are you bringing in whenever you don't plan? Why would you liquidate draft capital when you don't plan on actually making a run in the postseason? So we'll see. Let's go a little more present day. Let's talk about the game on Monday. And we already talked about it with Justin Fields. So let's talk about it holistically. Alyssa, what is success against the New England Patriots? I mean, we know what success is for Justin Fields and what we're all going to be analyzing there, so on and so forth. For the team, is a win success, or is this one of those moral victory games where we can take solace in something?
Well, considering the Patriots aren't the Commanders. So like when we talk about last week and how beating the Commanders wouldn't necessarily be considered success, especially how that game panned out. I think that if the Bears did beat the Patriots, I don't see this Bill Belichick team kind of shooting themselves in the foot enough to succumb to the Bears. So I feel like the Bears would have an impact and they would be part of the reason why, or they would be the reason why the Patriots are losing. So, I'd take a win as a success, but yeah, I want to see them play an entire game. We talked about how this team is a second half team. We saw the defense play an entire game last week. You want to see the defense and the offense and the special teams. And please, for the love of God, no more fumbles to end any chance at victory. I can't take it for a fourth game. I just can't do it.
Yeah, Aldo, I like I said before, I'm really good at asking questions that I don't have an opinion on. So last week I asked you, would you rather have lost to the Commanders 38-35, but Justin Fields puts up a bunch of stats, or would you rather have won a 14-12 game? And I think we both kind of lean towards the win, just because that you can build a winning culture off of wins. In retrospect, after looking at the game, I would have much rather have taken a loss 38-35 rather than 12-7. But what qualifies as success going into Monday night against the Patriots?
Well, I think a win. It's, as Justin Fields said after the game in this press conference, the thing that they have to focus now is on finishing these drives. They had their most red zone trips in a game this season with 3 against Washington, and failed to score on all 3 of them. They score on any one of them and they win the game. Against the Vikings, they lost by a touchdown, and they could not did not do a good job of taking advantage of all the scoring opportunities that they had. The field goal kicker was the most valuable player of that game. The Giants as well, they lose by 8 points. So in order for all of us to take a look at this team and say, well, that's definitely progress, it is going into the fourth quarter. As Alyssa said, this team is the defense is keeping this team in games, and having the offense, whether it's through the running game with Herbert and Montgomery, or the passing game with Kmet and Mooney and Fields, or whatever, they finish and win on prime time, really boost up the spirits of Chicago's fans, boost up the spirits of the players themselves, who Jalen Johnson in his press conference said, we're not feeling down, but we are, I'm paraphrasing, we're feeling sort of a sense of urgency of winning. And Justin Fields said, I'm tired of being close. I'm tired of being close. And Jalen Johnson was asked, well, who's telling you guys that you're close? And he goes, well, the score, the coaches and the score, we are close. So I think that's what we need to see as a football team, as a football fans, and the Bears themselves as an organization needs to see. I gotta share something with you, something real quick. Looking at next season, I know we're supposed to be talking present, but I took this little exercise of, this is the starting lineup for 2023 in terms of players who are signed and are currently starting. So we've got starters, and the white X's means that we're just set, but the green X's would mean that we have a superstar in that position. We have no superstars on offense signed for 2023.
Shocker.
Yeah, exactly. And we have 3 positions where we don't have a starter signed. Left guard position, and you could say that's the left tackle position, because perhaps Braxton Jones is going to be moved inside if there's an acquisition of a left tackle in the draft or something like that. We don't have a slot receiver. We don't have another receiver opposite Darnell Mooney. And then on defense, it looks a little better, but not great. I did give green X's to the defensive backfield, because I do believe that these guys are on the cusp of becoming Pro Bowl caliber players. Of course, I'm talking about Brisker, Kyler Gordon, Jalen Johnson, and we know that Eddie Jackson has a Pro Bowl pass. Roquan Smith, I put as a green because, John, as you said, we got the ability to franchise tag him and have him for next season. And in his final press conference, when he was talking about contracts, he seemed to be pretty happy when he heard the figure for franchise tag. Mm-hmm. But there are no linebackers signed for next season. And, of course, the all-important 3-tech position, which you wouldn't mind seeing the Bears invest a first-round draft pick in, because this defense really relies on a disruptive 3-tech defensive tackle. That's necessary. The 3 other offensive linemen, and I included Robert Quinn because he's currently signed for next season, they're not playing at a high level. And so really you could look for upgrades. Bottom line, what this exercise tells me is you need to pick up bodies and good bodies, green X's, guys who can play at a high level.
Aldo, I agree with you about the 3 technique, but can you imagine the reaction to Bears fans, if in the first round they have a top 10 pick and they go defensive line?
Oh, yeah.
after taking Brisker and Kyler Gordon with their 2 highest picks last year, and the Bayless Jones thing still kind of iffy of how he's going to fit into the system. He was hurt. You got to get him healthy, but he's 2 muffed punts so far. Can you imagine the reaction if they go defense with a top 10 pick and they still don't address the offensive line or a wide receiver like that? I myself included in that, because I think that I haven't evaluated what the free agents look like defensively, but I just feel like there's nothing you can do in free agency that's really going to bolster this wide receiving core. There is something you can maybe do in the draft to boost the wide receiving core. And I think that is the balancing act that Ryan Poles is going to have to do to say, how are we going to improve this position and how are we going to improve this position? Is there an opportunity to improve this position through free agency? And if there isn't, do we have to go with a high draft pick because we have to find a way to improve this position? If there's options in free agency to improve it, I think you have to go that way and say, look, the free agency and we have a bunch of money to spend, but we don't want to spend it on these guys. We got to invest a high draft pick on a wide receiver because there isn't anyone worth spending that much money for in free agency. So I think that it's going to be interesting to see how they pull this string to high draft capital, because they have all of their picks. They're going to have a first and a second and third and all that other good stuff. But how are they going to address that? That is, I'm uber curious, and I'm not trying to get too ahead of myself. I'm already in May. I'm already in May talking about
we all are.
Yeah. And that was actually something I wanted to bring up. I'm like, I want to ask you guys, because I know I love defense. I'm going receiver in the first round. If it shakes out where there's one of those guys, I talking to Danny Shimon about the kid from Ohio State. It rings a bell. Jordan Addison, who was at Pitt, now at USC. What position are you taking in the first round right now? Alyssa, I'll start with you, and then Aldo jump in.
I mean, like you said, receiver, or I'd go offensive line. Like those are the 2 biggest things. Because at this point, assuming that this regime is still intent, and it seems like it, on Justin Fields, you need to help him. But when you look at in free agency, you look at the receivers available. You have to go. I think you have to go receiver in the draft. I was like, I'm going to take whatever John doesn't take, but now I taught myself back into receiver, I think. So yeah, no, I think I definitely go receiver. I mean, like Darnell Mooney, like you said, like he's that's it that they have right now, and we're seeing that he's not a number 1 receiver. You need to go out and get a top receiver. And like you mentioned, Jackson Smith and Jigba, also someone from Ohio State, someone who has played with Fields as well. So there's that comfortability, because you weren't able to get Chris Olave, obviously. So, I mean, yeah, as long as they go offense, I won't be disappointed. I mean, yeah, like I still have an inkling that they're going to go defense, I think, because now you have Matt Eberflus, a defensive-minded head coach. But this is Ryan Poles, and you really hope that he's like, I need to help my quarterback. So as long as he goes receiver or offensive line, I can't find a reason to be mad at that.
Yeah, I always like to focus at the line of scrimmage. And so the kid out of Northwestern who is playing left tackle, some people say he'll probably be better at the guard position in the NFL because he's got shorter arms than you would like as a left tackle, but his technique is so sound. His feet are so quick. I'm talking about Peter Skoronski. To me, I would love it if he fell to where the Bears are drafting, and now we've got the left side of our line is basically healthy and ready to go for the next 10 years. So I would love to see a guy like that. As J2K says in the chat, this draft is deep with second-round caliber wide receivers. And can you find a real true number 1 receiver in those ranks? Of course, players improve. Nobody thought that Darnell Mooney was going to be a solid number 2 receiver, and but he is, and so we just need to pair him up with a good number 1, and we could potentially find that in the second round. So you need to go offensive line and wide receiver with your first 2 picks. And to answer your early question, I know it was rhetorical, but I can see Alyssa already preparing a bunch of columns saying Bears Twitter explodes as Ryan Poles drafts another defensive player with his
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
And I think that I think there are some enticing free agents upon the offensive line too. I mean, Orlando Brown's going to hit the market. Jack Conklin's going to hit the market. I think these are if they feel like they could draft a lineman high and then go get one of those big guys in free agency and really try to solidify the line there and then go get a second round wide receiver, I'm completely fine with that. I don't want to say that it's like receiver or bust for me, but much like what you were saying, Alyssa, if they don't address the line or the wide receiver early, I'm going to be a little disappointed. I understand the need for that 3 technique in the heart of that defense and how they need that. But they're currently holding NFL teams to 12 and 20 points, and they're only scoring 7 and 13. So I'd like to see a little bit. I'd like to see a little bit more of that even out, where Justin Fields isn't running for his life, and maybe he has someone to throw to. So I think that once again, it's a balancing act of what positions are ripe in the free agency market, which positions are ripe in the draft, and how are you going to attack it? That's that game of chess that Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus are going to have to play in the offseason. And here we are talking about the offseason in week 7. So that's it. So
It's a new record.
Yeah, I don't know. 2017 was pretty bad. The first year of the show, we kind of phoned it in with Aldo with his classic Firefox campaign was pretty good. So
Thank you.
I've been around long enough to remember that. So, but yeah, I guess in years of distress, is this the worst you felt in a while? As far I don't want to say worse, but is this like the quickest you've kind of given up on a team outside? I think 2017 with the Mike Glennon year, we even thought that, okay, Glennon looks okay as a free agent pickup, but the wide receivers, the way they shook out was like Marcus Wheaton and Kendall Wright and Dontrell Inman and Jeremy Bellamy maybe was there. Like, is this the least amount of hope you've had since then, really?
Yeah, I would say yes. I think the prevailing feeling that I'm having right now is nervousness about Justin Fields. For the first time, I'm beginning to wonder, is he really the one? I have been saying all along, let's be patient. He's going to be fine. He's going to be fine. But I've seen enough tape over the last 2 or 3 weeks to be really concerned and then compared I looked at some of the scouting reports when he came out of college, and it's the same deficiencies, the same weaknesses that he had in college, he still has as a pro. Now, again, it is early. It's got what 15, 16 starts in the NFL. I'm old enough to remember when you would sit a quarterback for 2 or 3 seasons and prepare him that way for NFL stardom. And in today's NFL, that doesn't happen anymore. So the poor young man is being thrown into the fire. But some of the tape does concern me when he's just staring down receivers, when he's not pulling the trigger, when he's making, one of the things that was a positive for him was he doesn't make the same mistake over and over again. Well, he's been doing that as a pro. So that's my prevailing thought right now. I don't care if, I want them to win, but if he starts throwing 3-4 touchdowns a game, averaging that throughout the rest of the season, then I'll feel good because I'll say, we can fix this defense and let's get ready for playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I think if he starts throwing 2 or 3 touchdowns a game, the defense is playing well enough that they will win those games then.
You would think, right?
Yeah. I think that if they start getting that kind of production out of the offense, then they're going to win more games than we expected if he's throwing 2 or 3 touchdowns a game, because the defense is holding their own for the most part. Their run defense needs some tweaking, clearly, but they're holding their own as far as a holistic outlook on how they're playing. So, I'm certainly I'm very hopeful for Justin Fields, and I'm sticking to what I said earlier, where I'm not going to fully judge him until we're a couple weeks into 2023, because that's hopefully the organization put some weapons around him. He feels more comfortable with those weapons. He has a little more time to throw the ball, and we see what happens when you surround people with a bunch of talent. We saw, I mean, Patrick Mahomes came off in his first year of starting. He has Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, and I think maybe Kareem Hunt was on that team. And then you also have, Justin Herbert comes off and he has Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. And so when you flood these guys, Tua Tagovailoa has, I butchered his last name as I always do. You give him Tyreek Hill, you give him Jalen Waddle and Mike Gesicki, and you give him some playmakers. So I'm not going to judge this guy until I see him with some weapons around him. But your concerns are very valid, Aldo. I completely see where you're coming from, because not all of those are weapons related. A lot of those are between the ears. And so we just got, I hate saying patience, because look how far that's gotten Bears fans so far. But I'm trying to have a little bit of patience here. What do you think, Alyssa?
I think every time that you say patience, you should take a drink. It could be our new drinking game.
They don't make enough liquid in the world for that.
No, but I mean, you both made excellent points, and I mean, because I'm with Aldo, this is the first time where I'm like starting to get a little worried, but also understanding that he hasn't even technically started an entire season, and then you kind of see recent examples like Tua Tagovailoa and Jalen Hurts, and how there were questions about them, and you saw what the teams did to build around them, and you're seeing them take those steps forward. But then again, like what John was saying, a lot of the struggles he's having, and Aldo too, you're saying, is it's not necessarily weapons related, but I think that once he has that trust, when he can go out there, because I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of these big program quarterbacks coming out of the draft is because, they have a lot of talent around them. And then when they come to the NFL, it's not always the same. And the Bears are the perfect example of that. So, Justin is he's kind of had a rude awakening. And so I think once he feels like he can trust his offensive line and trust his receivers, I think then he can just play football, because at this point you see that clock going off really quick in his head, and he's just worried about getting out of there and getting out of there alive. You saw some of those hits that he's taken. So, it's patience, like you said.
Yeah.
Drink.
Yep.
I'd like to add one.
That's all we can do.
I'd like to add one other thing, and it's based on what longtime Niner fan says here. He's talking about the entire NFC is in a down cycle. Well, really, offense throughout the National Football League is down. So when you evaluate the Chicago Bears offense, you've got to look at it within the context as to what's happening in the entire NFL. Lots of teams are having trouble scoring points. Lots of quarterbacks are having trouble throwing touchdown passes, and that's because defenses are catching up with the newfangled offenses, the newfangled offensive schemes. We're seeing a lot of those shell defenses just begging you, go ahead, try to throw it. You're not gonna, and so that's why we're seeing really good run games, because that's the only way to counteract what these defensive zone schemes are up against. So when evaluating Justin Fields, that is another thing to kind of put in context. It's just not him that's struggling. There's veteran quarterbacks who are having a hard time too.
So you're saying go to the T formation. That's what we got to do. 3 yards in a cloud of dust, win that ball game 3-0. No, your point is that's a very good point, though. And I think that if the Bears are able to put together, they're able to have a really good offseason, I think the NFC and specifically the NFC North is in a time of regression from the higher powers, where I think Green Bay is obviously fading a little bit. They don't have anything around Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers may not be that interested in playing for the Green Bay Packers much longer. What you see is what you get out of Minnesota with Kirk Cousins, as long as he's the quarterback. And then you like the scrappy Lions and what they're doing, and they're scoring some points, but at the end of the day, they're still not putting it together quite yet. Maybe they're a step away, but this division is ripe for the picking if you can put something together. And in 2023, if you're able to have a big draft class and a big free agent class, and your quarterback's able to take another step forward, there's nothing to say that they couldn't be contenders in the division next year. And I'm not trying to get way ahead of myself here, but like if you really surround this kid with weapons and you already have a pretty good defense, you're able to find a couple missing pieces there and get some good receivers and solidify the offensive line. Who's to say? Now, once again, I'm putting a lot of things have to happen there. Like, it's like, if this happens and this happens, and if I had wheels, I'd be a wagon. But there's a lot of different things that has to happen in this situation. So I guess staying hopeful for 2023 is all we can say in October of 2022. So
in week 7.
Week 7. This is what it's come to. Before we start talking about the 2025 draft class, let's wrap this show up here. Aldo, what's going on in the bar room this week? 25, 50 shows? What's going on?
Not quite that many, but we've got a nice lineup coming up tomorrow. Crosstown Crosstalk starts our live broadcast day. And by the way, I want to encourage people, if they did not see Thomas Q. Jones, a former Chicago Bears running back, 2006 Super Bowl team. He was on with Greg Gabriel and myself, and he talked a little bit about Rex Grossman. Dan Aguirre actually submitted a question and asked him, do you think that the Bears would have won if Greasy would have played in the second half? And I've shared a clip before, but the entire response is fascinating. He basically, literally said that the game was too big for Rex that day. And, sometimes you come up against the biggest game of your life and you're just not ready for it. And that's what he said about Rex. So that and so many of our other shows are on archive here on the YouTube channel. On Sunday, the Barfly Tailgate Show is going to be on. Prior to that, Mike North and myself will be talking sports betting at 8 a.m. Central. Then the Barfly Tailgate Show. No Bear football show this Sunday, but we will be back on Monday with that, of course, during the game and after the game. So we've got plenty of good stuff here for your entertainment.
Alyssa, 25, 50 articles. What are we churning out this week?
Well, now that it's funny because we had the short week, so I had to kind of condense everything. So there was a lot more, and now it's like the longer week, so kind of like stretching it out. But of course, just never, my fingers are always going on the keyboard. So I know our coverage is going to really start tomorrow because we had to push it back a day. But yeah, getting ready for the Patriots game. And then I'll be up until 2 a.m., after that game, which is, I don't know, maybe they found a way to pull out the win. Maybe, probably not. But yeah, we'll have you covered on Bears Wire regardless, getting ready for the game on Monday night and then post game right afterwards.
Of course, always great coverage over there. And like Aldo said before, during the game and after the game, Bear football, I conveniently or inconveniently will be on the road for work, so I will not be able to be on Bear football this week. But I'm sure the guys will have you covered. Aldo will maybe jumping in. A couple of maybe guests will be jumping in. Danny Shimon and Tyler Ellis will have you covered as well for that raw emotion right after the game. As soon as the clock hits 000, Bear Football has you covered. You can get us on Facebook, YouTube, anywhere where you listen to us. Set those alerts, by the way, because as soon as we go live, you want to get that alert to say, hey, somebody's yelling about something, and it's probably Bears related, so I got to go watch that. So make sure you got those alerts set up for you. So that will do it for this edition of Buffone 55. I appreciate everybody who has listened to this podcast, watched this podcast, the live version, the podcast version, the later version, the audio version, the video version, and, who knows, maybe we'll be, some other version. Technology keeps evolving. What's that?
TikTok version.
Well, that's going to take some convincing, but okay.
There are some opportunities to be had there.
We can have that conversation later. But yeah.
We're pressuring him. Peer pressure, John. Don't worry.
I don't like this live peer pressure. I tend to cater that. So let it go. That'll do it for this edition of Buffone 55. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week, everybody. Enjoy the game.
Goodbye.
Thank you.